Hello everyone, I am Jmulls, and we have some new information about the Occult Crescent South Horn coming in patch 7.25 of Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. Now isn't that a bit of a word salad? However, on the patch 7.2 website, they uploaded some new screenshots, and I think they're rather interesting. I want to talk about them, so let's do that. First, let's read the old reliable description, because I think it's rather neat. Betwixt Eorzea and Terrell lies Shady's Triangle, a wave-washed grave to untold souls. Join one legendary explorer and his intrepid crew as they chart a course for these fearsome waters and unravel the mystery that swells therein. And I think just looking at these screenshots, it really drives home a lot of the reasons I'm actually looking forward to the Occult Crescent overall, and while I do have my concerns about it, it's a step in the right direction for a lot of elements of Final Fantasy XIV, including tone, aesthetic, and narrative framing. There's been this conversation we've been having in regards to should Final Fantasy XIV go back to being high fantasy? How do you even define high fantasy? And I think what the Occult Crescent is showing is one iteration of quote-unquote high fantasy that I think Final Fantasy XIV has been kind of lacking for a while now, that we're seeing a resurgence of because of the South Horn, because of Occult Crescent, and it looks rather interesting and cool. I love the giant ruins we're going to get to explore, seeing nature almost like start to reclaim them as well. We've seen ruins like this scattered across Eorzea because, you know, the Occult Crescent is seemingly diving right on into the story of the War of the Magi, or at least something concerning those old city-states of yore. It's an aesthetic that we've had in Final Fantasy XIV ever since the days of A Realm Reborn. It's something integral to the Final Fantasy XIV aesthetic that you were introduced to very early on in your experience. So seeing it explored again, and exploring those concepts, exploring those aesthetics, exploring possibly information and story concerning those things and those ancient entities, that is rather cool to me. And I think the way that it's being presented in the Occult Crescent, again, is right up my alley. Juxtaposing those ancient ruins with these wide, vast green fields filled with dinosaurs of all things. I mean, come on, it just looks cool. Having a combination of various architectural styles, like domed buildings or ruins jutting up out of the ocean and the waters, or just giant pyramids as well with dinosaurs and the giant bubbles in the sky. I think it's a style, a visual that is closely connected to Final Fantasy XIV that we just haven't really seen or explored in quite a long time. So I quite welcome this, especially since these aesthetics, like these visuals, pair so well with the overall idea of this being a journey, being this like Indiana Jones style of adventure that I've wanted out of Dawntrail for so long that I didn't get out of Dawntrail, outside of like one expert dungeon. But alongside all of that, pairing us up with this character, Ketenram, I think is a great decision. This is a guy that was known to be this real famous explorer, known to the people of Terral, but we didn't really interact with him all that much in the actual main story of 7.0. Like, yeah, we met the dude, but we didn't really explore him as a character or all that character could possibly offer for a cool summertime jam of an adventure. But here, in a piece of content that a lot of people, myself included, have been craving, something combat-oriented that takes place in an overworld that helps you remember this is an MMORPG at the end of the day, where we're going to explore essentially the Bermuda Triangle of Final Fantasy XIV, of this world. Taking a character like Ketenram and pairing him up with us for this zone just seems like something that works. So I hope they give him an interesting character. I hope we explore this story in an interesting way, because I think it can offer a lot of good for the overall experience of Final Fantasy XIV right now. Now, I know and I understand that the Occult Crescent is seemingly heavily inspired and based on Final Fantasy V, and that's one of the Final Fantasy games that I just haven't had the time to play yet. However, just overall, visually, I think the Occult Crescent looks really dang cool. And like in this one screenshot of the crew fighting a giant Mind Flayer guy, look at all the things that are going on in this image. Besides having the ancient ruins in the back there, besides having a giant pyramid like in the Heavensward Alliance raid, it's a really cool visual for the background, but also look at the combat, what's going on here. We have one dude who just strolls up with a giant cannon like he's Napoleon Bonaparte. We have another guy who has seemingly skinned an entire wolf to wear it. And look, I don't play Astrologian, so maybe I'm just not up to date with what they can do, but I'm pretty sure those spell effects are rather new. And they look cool. Also got like some flying like impy boy guys. Overall, it's a lot of aesthetics that, to me, work and fit with Final Fantasy XIV. And like, Final Fantasy XIV has always been a game to have varied aesthetics, right? Absolutely. But I think Final Fantasy XIV's unique style of fantasy that we had back in the days of, say, A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, and Stormblood, we just haven't seen that style of fantasy all that much in recent years, and I think this is a good return to form for that. And in this other screenshot, we're in this arena, fighting these three really ugly guys that I imagine are just a reference to Final Fantasy V in some way. We're seeing a little Lalafell in the wolf costume, which just works in my opinion, but also a dude summoning an entire unicorn, like it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Crystal Beast. And I think this is addressing one of my biggest complaints when it comes to Bozja, and that was just the lack of visual variety going on in those zones a lot of the time. Whereas here, we've seen quite a few different environments and arenas for encounters to actually take place in. And like maybe a couple of these screenshots come from the actual raid that we get alongside all this, sure. But still, even in like the overworld, there seems to be a good amount of visual diversity going on there. Now let's talk about the phantom jobs, because this is a rather interesting concept and I think it can go one of two ways. It can be either a massive disappointment or a great feature and a great addition to Final Fantasy XIV overall. So, what are they? Essentially, off-specs. You acquire phantom jobs over your tenure in the Occult Crescent, and you level them up. And by leveling them up, you acquire various things that you can utilize alongside your regular job abilities. I believe a lot of the actual phantom jobs come from Final Fantasy V as well, but it's a good opportunity to test out mechanics and to just give players tools that wouldn't ordinarily work with the base game. It was one of the coolest elements of Lost Actions in Bozja, just how wild and wacky and how overpowered you can become with utilizing those tools in the right ways. I think there is a genuine concern when it concerns phantom jobs, though, that they could just be too grindy, or the things you actually acquire from them just could not be particularly fun or as impactful as, say, Lost Actions and Lost stuff that we had back with Bozja. But I think overall it's an interesting idea, and if especially we're able to at some point like mix and match various phantom actions together from various phantom jobs, I think that could go a long way, just to give us a good sense of gameplay variety to incentivize playing with different playstyles as well. And so long as the actions are impactful enough, keeping the content feeling fresh and new. Because that is one of my main concerns going into the Occult Crescent, is that it just becomes too grindy. That is kind of the nature of this content overall, right? But I think there are ways to handle it to where it stays being fun and enjoyable instead of just being a giant slog. I don't like the idea we can't level up alt jobs in this system. I get they want the deep dungeon being introduced with 7.3 to fill that role. I feel you could just let both do it. But a big element of this system, a big element of the Occult Crescent is going in there and grinding out a bunch of mobs, and then doing a bunch of fates and doing a bunch of critical engagements, and then being able to do the raid. There needs to be a good sense of variety there. There needs to be a good amount of content to let people sink their teeth into it so it doesn't get old too quickly. Because if you play anything, no matter how big it is, for a long enough period of time, it will become just stale and bland over time. At least most of the time. For instance, I loved Bozja when I first played it, but going back to Bozja to level up, say, my Viper when Dawntrail first came out, I was bored out of my mind because I had played it so much, it was all just stale to me at that point. And since we're not going to get another new zone for the Occult Crescent until like 7.5x, that is a long wait. So the hope is that the content being introduced with the South Horn is enough to bide our time. I kind of think and suspect that the idea is that we will focus on the Occult Crescent for about a patch because we're getting the other zone in 7.5x. So we'll have about a patch, probably a bit less than a patch, until the new expansion comes out to really partake in the Occult Crescent then. So for the South Horn, they probably expect South Horn itself to run us about a patch until the Deep Dungeon comes online, and then we like swap over to that. Like maybe that's the MO, maybe that's what they're going for here. It's a bold strategy. strategy. We'll have to see how it pays off. Like, it could work, absolutely. Especially if the new deep dungeon we end up getting is really fun and interesting. I just don't particularly believe just getting a couple new phantom jobs at some point in the future before we get to the 7.5x new zone. I don't think a couple new phantom jobs will really be enough to spice things up, but like maybe I'll be wrong on that. We have to wait and see. But I think overall, like what I talked about, in terms of the vibe going on here, in terms of the overall aesthetic, in terms of us dealing with Ketenram, I quite like it. In terms of the aesthetic seemingly going back to the War of the Magi and dealing with that even more for the story. Really cool, interesting, I like it. So I think overall, I am optimistic. I do have my concerns when it concerns the Occult Crescent, absolutely. Especially when it concerns its staying power. But we really need to be able to play it first to be able to make any accurate judgment. And it comes out in a few days, so you know I'll be there to sink my teeth into it on launch day and find out all that it has to offer. And if you want to join me as we cover the Occult Crescent, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And leave a comment down below with if you are optimistic or if you're pessimistic about the Occult Crescent. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you like? What are you worried about? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and to hear your perspectives. They also show off a few other glamour sets. They don't really do anything for me. It is what it is. The one on the right somewhat reminds me of the Immortal Flames set you can get. But hey, thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Have a great day. Go play some video games, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.